kitties and kitten lovers, I'm Akushi, and Lena asked, almost a year ago, if I could make a video talking about all the fursuits I've made so far in detail. I absolutely love talking about my fursuit, so of course I'll grant that wish. This is gonna be a two-part video though. This script got ridiculously long, so I needed to divide it for editing purposes. But I will release both parts this month, since I owe you another video anyway. Let's get started! A little disclaimer at first. Since I already talked about my fursuits in some videos, I will repeat some information here. But in this video I'll elaborate the materials and techniques I used and the features that each of the different suits have. Let's go! It all started in autumn of 2017. The first year at the new school had just begun. I found new friends who were furries and showed me what that meant, and I was fascinated. I instantly wanted to have a fursona and a suit so I could go to cons with them. So I told my mom about it. She was a little surprised, but okay with it, and she helped me gather materials for my first ever suit, Akushi 1.0. She is made out of upholstery foam from our local hardware store and fur from 2 local fabric shops. The red fur was actually pretty good quality, close to luxury shack, but the black and white were terrible. The white was way too thin, and the black was kinda matted, so you couldn't brush it properly. Trimming them was a nightmare. I didn't have an animal clipper back then, so I had to use a human hair trimmer and scissors. The eyes are actually high quality. They are made from plastic embroidery canvas and foamies, and I still make them like this to this day. The details, like the inside of the mouth, the tongue and the paw pads, were made from felt. Don't do that. Use minky fabric if you can. Felt is so weak. Speaking of the paw pads, I can't show you the paws here because after Akushi 1.0's first and only suit outing, I threw them away because I knew that I could do better. But I'm pretty sure you can get a feeling of them from the pictures I'm showing here. The toes weren't trimmed, the paws weren't lined so they felt very uncomfortable, and the felt paw pads were glued on due to laziness. Her earrings are made out of shower curtain rings that I colored with gold acrylic paint, and I still use them to this day. Let's get into the building process a little more. Since I'm a little overachiever and can never start small, I tried to build this first suit with a tiny moving jaw, following this tutorial by Tiny Badger. This is why Akushi 1.0 is the only suit I ever made without a bucket head base. I used elastic band for the moving jaw structure and then strips of foam around to give it shape. You know, like a bucket head base would do. Of course it didn't work out, so I ended up with a messy base that didn't have a moving jaw at all. As you can see, nothing fancy here. The ears are just foam and she doesn't have any fluff cheeks. But she's big. As you can see, she's even bigger than my current head. She is by no means pretty or good, but to be honest, it could have gone much worse. I used actual foam, no cardboard here. I used actual fur. The eyes are high quality. Not bad for a start, am I right? Oh yeah, I should probably talk about her tail. Now this is something different. Because unlike most tails, especially beginner tails, this isn't just an ordinary plush tail with stuffing. No. This is a moving tail, made out of pool noodle and wire, following this tutorial by Lupus at Vulpes. Pretty cool, huh? So yeah, that's about it for Akushi 1.0. Let's continue with my second suit, Akushi 2.1. Surprise! So yeah, after my first and only suit outing with Akushi 1.0, and after seeing all those beautiful suits there, I knew that I could do much better. So only a few weeks after finishing Akushi 1.0 in spring of 2018, I started working on Akushi 2.0, a headbase that never got furred. For the muzzle shape, I followed this tutorial by Sky High Studios very closely, and this method just didn't work for me. She looked like a weird duck, so I threw this first base away and started over. This is why I call my second finished suit Akushi 2.1. I think this is a good time to talk about stacking versus carving in fursuit making. They are the two ways you can think when crafting something like a fursuit head. Stacking means that you use thin layers of foam and glue them together and then carve them down and then add another layer if needed and so on. Carving, on the other hand, means that you use thick pieces of foam and carve them into the desired shape. My problem with the first base was that it was created using the stacking method. As you can see, for the muzzle I first cut this thin beak-like shape and then tried to build it up by putting more foam on top of it. With the second try, I used a thick piece of foam and carved it into the desired muzzle shape, and it worked a lot better for me. You just have to try and figure out which way is easier for you. And of course, you never just stack or just carve, they both go hand in hand. Even the thicker piece of foam needed to be padded out with extra pieces to be wide enough for the muzzle. But maybe you could follow what I'm saying here regardless. I tried to make Akushi 2.0 much cuter and way closer to my art style. So I made her irises and pupils as big as I did in my drawings and gave them a yellow-orange-ish gradient. I also gave her a tiny mouth and rounded ears. As I said in my Art vs. Fursuits video, I looked at a lot of actual cat photos for reference this time. This was also the first time I did my iconic changeable magnetic hair. I used neodymium magnets and I glued some normal ones to the head base and soon some sewable ones to the hairpiece. In the end, she had her standard white hair poof, a black one and a yellow one. Enough of the building process, let's talk materials. The biggest difference between Akushi 1.0 and Akushi 2.1 is definitely the fur. This time I ordered the fur online from stoffeckevogt.de because my friends recommended it to me. It's mid-quality fur. It's not terrible, but it's still way too thin compared to luxury shack fur. But at least this time all the fur had the same quality, which improved the outcome and overall look of the suit immensely. Everything else pretty much stayed the same. The details were still made out of felt, but this time the pop heads were sewed on instead of glued on. For the tail, I stripped the old fur and reused the core because I didn't want to rebuild the whole thing. So I just wrapped it in new fur and called it a day. And that would be it for Akushi 2.1 if I didn't make another pair of hand paws, a pair of feet paws and a pair of arm sleeves later. The second pair of hand paws was the first pair of puppy paws I ever made. I used the ever so popular Curlworks pattern and lined it with some cute star jersey that I had left over. The shape of the feet paws was heavily inspired by my fursuit making idol Aurora Bloom, who had just finished her first ever suit, Aurora 1.0, a few months before I started working on Akushi 2.1. I built in a pair of these rubber sandals and used a spare yoga mat for the soles. The rest was just carving and covering as always. I barely ever used the feet paws, but I was still proud of them. The arm sleeves were basically just two tubes of fur that I connected with a rubber band at the top. At first I used them a lot, but I didn't really like the sort of buff look they gave Akushi, so I eventually stopped. I think that's everything I have to say about this suit. Let's move on to my first ever pre-made suit. Suit number 3 is Estrom, formerly known as Joseph, my donkey pre-made. I had a lot of grey fur left over because I originally planned to make a fursuit of his cape with the Stoffecke fur, and I changed my mind and decided that I would save up for something of higher quality. So I posted a question sticker on my Instagram story asking my followers which species I should build as a pre-made with the colors that I had left over. Donkey was the option I liked best, so I went for it. I didn't even sketch out a design, I just built a cute donkey base, taped it, and then came up with the design as I went. In hindsight, I wouldn't recommend doing this. Even a quick sketch can help you plan better. When he was finished, for example, I wished that I had moved the star on the forehead further down, because it would always get obscured by the magnetic hair. Yes, magnetic hair again. I thought this would be a good selling feature. A new addition to my skill set was the hen hoof pattern that I made for the suit. It's simple, but it's cute, and I still use it to this day. This was my first time working with fake leather, and I think they turned out pretty good. Also, these hooves were my first time lining the gloves with lycra, and I never went back from there. To this day, I still use the same kind of colorful lycra because I think it looks lovely. The tail was my first one that was just plush, or rather tails, because I made two since the first one turned out way too small compared to the head size. Oops. Also new is the fully lined inside of the head that I gave him. Since he was made for sale, I wanted him to look as professional as possible. This is also why my friend Max and I did a proper little photo shoot outside before I uploaded him online. But yeah, that's Astrum. I put him up for sale first in May and then again in August of 2019, when he got finally sold to his forever home, where he still is to this day. He's owned by a young Brit named Oscar, who gave him his new name and also came up with his new design and already refurbed him once to correct some of the mistakes that I made. I absolutely love his new look. Once again, thank you so much for buying him, Oscar. You have no idea what this purchase meant to me back then. If you'd like to see Astrum after his makeover, go check out 3 is my unlucky number on Instagram. Moving on. Next up in line is Toxic Fox, my first ever fursuit commission. I started this foxy boy in summer 2019 and got him ready just in time for the Halloween fursuit walk here in Dresden. Since he belongs to a friend of mine, we aimed for this Halloween walk as our deadline and I made it! Before working on the actual suit, this time I drew a proper turnaround reference sheet. I know Akushi's markings by heart, and as I said, I made Astrum's design up as I went. But this time we had a pre-existing design that didn't belong to me, so I wanted to make sure that I got everything right. Tox was my first suit that was made with luxury shag fur, ordered from dutchcolor.nl. When it arrived, I was so impressed by how soft, fluffy and thick high-quality fur is. Loved it! Also, as you may have noticed, Tox has a very special feature. I love working with magnets, as indicated by the changeable magnetic hair on all of my fursuits. So my friend asked me if I could do some more magnetic magic. I said that I could try and boom! Magnetic eyebrows! They were a struggle to get right, not gonna lie. But I'm very proud of how well they worked out for my first time making something like this. Also, with this suit, I left felt behind me for good and switched to minky details. Mid-quality minky to be fair, but still way better than felt. From his nose to his paw pads, all details that are not made of fur are made out of minky. Speaking of the paws, fun fact, with this suit I invented the 4-finger puffy paw pattern that I still use to this day, even though I modified it a few times since then. And that would be it for Tox and also for this first part video, if the suit wouldn't have had a little makeover already. Yeah, Tox is the first and so far only suit I made that also got refurbed by me. I always improve pretty quickly, whether it's drawing or fursuit making. So in 2021 I asked my friend if I was allowed to update Tox a little. I just couldn't stand his old look anymore. My friend agreed, and so in spring 2021 I took the suit home with me again, and in autumn 2021 I was finally done. This is what he looks like now. I hope you all agree that this was definitely worth it. I made the muzzle longer and slimmer to make him look more like a fox instead of a wolf. I enhanced his smile, smoothed out some foam parts, gave him new ears, new eyes, and fluff cheeks on both sides. He's still not perfect and he never will be, but it's way easier for me to look at the new version than the old. As an artist, I'll always be my hardest critic. And I know that, and I think it's for the better. I want my friends to run around in pretty suits. More pretty suits that belong to friends of mine next time in the second part of this video. We still have 5 more finished suits to go. Quick shameless plug at the end as always. All my social medias are linked in my description, and my Etsy shop is open too. I would love for you to check it out, and maybe you could add my shop to your favorites or even buy something. It would mean the world to me. If you're in need of a pair of cute white puppy paws with galaxy paw pads, you should check out my Etsy because, coincidentally, I got a pre-made pair available. Also, if you have ideas or wishes for future videos, please tell me in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Now I guess all that's left to say is thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Love you. Bye!